Asia is the biggest continent in the world by both area and population, so it comes as no surprise that the best of their stadiums are pretty impressive. We're gonna go through every country and somewhat arbitrarily choose which stadium is the best. If your country isn't listed, it was probably in the Europe video. Anyway, here is the best stadium in every Asian country. Afghanistan. It's where empires go to die. Let's hope McDonald's sets up shop here. Afghanistan is now a cricket-loving nation, which is good. Unfortunately, the reason why the government likes it is because the players wear pants rather than shorts. It's true. I've chosen Kabul International Cricket Stadium. The design is a little chaotic, but I guess that suits a city like Kabul. Bahrain. An appropriate name for a desert country. From the outside, Bahrain's national stadium looks like it might be a motorsports venue or something like that. I do really like the design, particularly those light towers and that big swooping roof canopy. But seriously, what is it with dictators putting their face everywhere? Is it brand recognition?
This stadium was me. I did this. Look at this face.
Bangladesh. Doesn't that name just roll off the tongue?
Bangladesh.
At the moment, they're building what might be one of the most bizarrely spectacular stadiums in the world. But for now, I'm gonna go for this cricket stadium in Sylhet. Yes, it's nowhere near the size of several others in the country, but I just love this earthen grandstand, and the traditional cricket architecture overall is quite nice. Bhutan. Apparently it's the happiest country on earth. Although I'm skeptical, nobody seems to own a PlayStation. Just a Wii. Chamlimatang Stadium. The design is very distinctive, being built in the style of the local buildings. Unlike the architecture, the grass is not authentic. It is around 2,300 meters or like 7,000 feet above sea level, so maybe that's a good thing. Also, I believe it's hired out to the local residents, so it gets a lot of use. Brunei. Petroleum makes up 90% of their exports, which has led the local government to place Greta Thunberg on the terrorist watch list. Much like Bhutan, they've also incorporated some local inspiration into their biggest stadium, just to a lesser extent. Other than this section here, it's a fairly bog-standard athletics/football stadium. Interesting light towers though. Surprisingly, there doesn't appear to be a large portrait of the Sultan of Brunei. Perhaps he's a little self-conscious. Cambodia. I like how their flag has a famous landmark in the center of it. I'd love to see Stonehenge on the English flag or the Eiffel Tower on the Spanish flag. The country recently unveiled a brand new national stadium in the capital, Phnom Penh. The design is supposed to resemble a Chinese boat. Yes, a Chinese boat. It was designed by a Chinese architect and funded by the Chinese government. In exchange, Cambodia's constitution now states that Xi Jinping looks nothing like Winnie the Pooh. If anything, Tigger. It's quite a spectacular design, but if you take away those big support structures, it's fairly similar to some of the stadiums China's built in Africa. The Taiwanese government has made it clear to me that I must refer to this place as Taiwanese Beijing, and point out that it is in fact a rogue province of Taiwan. They're building several world-class stadiums for the 2023 Asia Cup that they just pulled out of hosting, but as of right now, I'm gonna go for Hangzhou Sports Park Stadium. The flower-like exterior is extraordinary, and the interior, although less distinctive, still looks pretty good. And I'll give them a pass for the running track given that it was partially built to host the 2022 Asian Games. India. They gave the British curry, and in return the British gave them cricket. That's not a bad little trade. I do really have a soft spot for this ground, but I can't really say it's the best. They also have the world's largest stadium, but I don't know. It's a big symmetrical bowl. I'll give it to Wankhede Stadium, which is not even the biggest stadium in the city or even the original home of cricket in the city, but I love the design, which consists of rather steep seating, and I like this little open section. Unlike a lot of other cricket stadiums in India, there are no support pillars impeding the spectators' view, due to the lightweight cantilever roof. Indonesia. It's weird that the first, second and third biggest countries in Asia happen to be in alphabetical order. Indonesia. What to say about Indonesia? Ooh, shout out to nasi goreng, one of my favorites. It has to go to the brand new Jakarta International Stadium. I love that imposing exterior that includes a distinctive tiger-striped facade. It's the largest stadium in Asia with a retractable roof, and also the largest rectangular stadium in Asia, although not for long. I hope this sparks an avalanche of world-class football-specific stadiums to be built in Southeast Asia. Iran. Iran so far away. I would actually pronounce it Iran, but there's no song for that. Foulad Arena is a fairly new stadium, and with that comes modern amenities, such as a roof sheltering most of the spectators, which sounds like a standard feature, but it's actually not too common in Iran. I like that the patterns on the seating are as busy as a Persian rug, and at $40 million, the stadium was only slightly more expensive. Iraq, birthplace of civilization. Are we sure about that? You may be pleasantly surprised by the stadiums that Iraq has to offer, the over $500 million Basra International Stadium being the most impressive in my view. If you look at what the city of Basra looks like, it's quite remarkable that they have a stadium like this. The only thing that fits in is the facade, which is inspired by the bark of a date palm tree. How does the Iraqi government have this kind of dough to spend on a stadium? You'd have thought they'd have bigger fish to fry. Israel, the most popular nation among its neighbors, at least if you go by how many times it's mentioned. Whether you like them or not, Israel's stadiums are some of the best in the region. Sami Ofer Stadium. I'm usually not a fan of an all-gold exterior, but when in Israel, the distinctive aluminium exterior is contrasted by a more familiar, toned-down interior. Quite a few stadiums around the world have a very similar layout. It looks fantastic nonetheless. Mazel tov. Japan. I might be the only one left in the entire world, but still, after all these years, the only Pokemon I can name is Pikachu. I have a vague recollection of one being called Gavin, but I can't be sure. You might think that I'd go for the newly built Olympic Stadium, but I thought they could have been a bit more ambitious. My favourite stadium would probably be... despite the ugly form of a retractable roof, I'll still go with Toyota Stadium. It's probably the only stadium in the world that's named after a company that shares the name with the city that it's in, because the city's named after that company. Yeah, I'm pretty confident it's the only stadium in the world that can say the same. And I just think it looks great on the inside. I love those steep stands. Oh, Squirtle. Squirtle, not Gavin. Jordan. By all accounts, it's one of the leaders in the footwear industry, particularly basketball. Amman International Stadium is a rather uninspiring design, to be honest, but so are pretty much all the stadiums in the country, and this is the biggest, so that's the one I went for. It's the home of the national team, and so it's being kept in tip-top condition. It's alright, but how incredible would a stadium inspired by Petra be? Think about it, Jordan. Kuwait, a tiny country, but their currency is the strongest in the world. It beat up the rupee and the ruble with one hand tied behind its back. Jabba Al Ahmed International Stadium is amongst a small group of stadiums that look like a Pringle, and I don't blame the architects for being inspired by this humble chip. They are rather Moorish, but it came at a cost. After the initial opening of the stadium, they had to rework the design and it didn't open properly until 5 years later. I thought once you pop, you can't stop. Kyrgyzstan. Out of all the stands, and there are many of them, Kyrgyzstan is one of them. Dolan Omurzakov Stadium is not the most remarkable piece of architecture. It's basic and kind of boring, as are a good proportion of the stadiums that were built in the Soviet Union. At least the city has a fun name. Bishkek. 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 Laos.
Are you Chinese or Japanese?
They are Laotian, closer to Chinese, I guess. In fact, the new Laos National Stadium was built and financed by the Chinese government once again. Just like the one in Bhutan, this stadium has incorporated some traditional architecture, just a whole lot less convincing, but overall I like it. It has a laid-back vibe. Palm trees tend to do that. Lebanon. It's the best country in the world that has a cedar tree on its flag. I'm fairly confident in this statement. Saida Municipal Stadium is situated in a prime spot by the Mediterranean Sea, but I can't help but feel that the main stand should have been on the other side. Just why not? Regardless, it's a solid little stadium, with a cool looking roof and a definite laid back vibe. The ocean tends to do that. Malaysia. What do you get when you cross a cuddly tree-dwelling animal with a worker from Willy Wonka's factory? Kuala Lumpur. But that's not where you'll find the newly built Sultan Ibrahim Stadium. The design is inspired by the banana leaf, rather than the eucalyptus that Oompa Loompas eat. But that is of course just the exterior. It looks very stadium-like on the inside. It looks great actually, and it's the first rectangular stadium we've seen for a while, which is refreshing. Maldives. A strange mix of paradise and overcrowded urban streetscapes. The National Stadium is amongst the latter, surrounded by apartment buildings. Not only is it home to the national team, but every team in the National League. It's quite similar to an old-fashioned English-style stadium, just with a more flamboyant colour scheme. The Maldives was once a British protectorate after all. Interesting little stadium. Mongolia. It's stuck between Russia and China, but has somehow managed to remain independent and democratic no less. They must be protected by the ghost of Genghis Khan or something. MFF Football Centre is one of the few football-specific stadiums in the country, and although it's quite small, it's fairly new and in good condition. It does have an artificial turf field, but once again that's understandable in such a harsh climate. Myanmar. Sadly, it's perhaps best known for the recent military coup, but the country has so many beautiful pagodas, temples, and monasteries as well. The relatively flashy Wana Saidi Stadium, nailed it, was built prior to the 2013 Southeast Asian Games that it hosted, and is now home to the iconic Nay Pyi Taw FC that we all know and love. It's just your standard single-tiered bowl, all the seats are shaded, not too shabby. Nepal. They have the only flag that isn't rectangular.
Hello?
Oh, the only national flag that isn't rectangular. Sorry, Ohio.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
The newly redeveloped Pokhara Rangasala is not exactly a world-class stadium. Some might say that Kathmandu Stadium is a little better equipped, but that stunning unobstructed Himalayan backdrop has to count for something. That is world-class. North Korea. Kim Jong-un gets a bad rap, but he's a kind-hearted individual. Even though he could, he doesn't always use a flamethrower to execute dissidents. Sometimes it's a quick and painless RPG, but you never see his benevolent side in the mainstream media. Sad. Anyway, I guess I have to go for the world's largest stadium. At least that's what the North Korean government likes to say. Much like the one in China, the exterior is supposed to resemble a flower, and just like that flower, the field is artificial. I guess when Kim said they'd eat grass before giving up their nukes, he wasn't lying. Must have had people eating the grass. Oman. The Jamaican fella is disappointed. Sultan Qaboos Sports Complex features a beige exterior that matches the desert landscape. Only a few hundred seats under this tiny roof are shaded from the scorching sun, but it is in good condition, it has chairback seats throughout, and you get a rather nice view of a Rocky Mountain range, so that's good. Pakistan. The only country in the world to ever simultaneously host both nuclear weapons and Osama bin Laden. Scary thought. I stand corrected. Moulton Cricket Stadium is a cricket stadium in Moulton. Despite being built in the 21st century, it's still kept with the old school cricket stadium tradition of having several stands with their own separate roof, rather than a continuous bowl. It's rounded off with a continuous brick facade, which is nice. Philippines. Bong Bong. I'll give a mention to Philippine Arena, the biggest basketball arena in the world, but this video is for outdoor stadiums only. So I'll go for the new Clark City Athletic Stadium, built to host the 2019 Southeast Asian Games. The stadium is inspired by a nearby volcano, and is actually partially made from volcanic debris, which plays into the old Filipino saying, when life gives you lemons, don't complain because we've got f***ing volcanoes and that. I suppose the orange seats represent lava as well. Nice touch. Qatar. Wow, a country of under 3 million people is hosting the World Cup and building several world-class stadiums. Qatar is really punching above its weight. It just goes to show you, slavery is the way forward. There are actually a lot of great stadiums being built, but I guess I'll go with the stadium made from shipping containers. Because it does actually look pretty cool, and it will be dismantled after the tournament, so there's some more opportunity for a bit of slave labor.
Gonna take the passports away, make 'em work in the hot sun all day. Football stars will come and play. You can too, just don't be gay.
Saudi Arabia. They lead the world in vehicular-related deaths. Oh, I wonder why. Is it camels crossing the road or something? Maybe it's the sandstorms. King Abdullah Sports City is quite the impressive sight, I must admit. The spectacular exterior is inspired by traditional Islamic patterns, but those patterns also allow for much-needed ventilation in what is one of the hottest cities in the world, especially when humidity is taken into account. Thankfully, most matches take place at night, when the stadium's even cooler temperature-wise and aesthetically speaking. Singapore. It's very much the Hong Kong of Asia. Oh wait, no. Yeah. The National Stadium was one of the most costly stadiums in the world to construct, well over $1 billion. But what they got for their money was an incredible stadium that features a distinctive dome-shaped retractable roof. Actually, it's quite similar to this stadium in Japan, come to think of it. But it also features retractable seating to accommodate a variety of sports. And this opening at one end offers a bit of a skyline view, which is a nice touch. Oh, shout out to the floating stadium, that's got to get a mention. South Korea. On a per capita basis, they probably lead the world in cultural exports. I'm not really a K-pop fan, but it's a heck of a lot better than what's going on up north. I was tempted to go for this stadium that looks like it can fly, but I had to go for the slightly less interesting but slightly better Seoul World Cup Stadium, which is the largest in the country. And on second thought, this one also looks like it can fly, because the roof is inspired by a traditional Korean kite. It is a little monochromatic though. Sri Lanka. Bangladesh sounds good, but I like the name Sri Lanka even more. It's like Shangri-La. There are a few similar looking stadiums in the country, but Dambulla is my favourite of them all. It seems as if it's been plonked in the middle of a tropical rainforest. I love the unique seating arrangement as well. One downside is that the field is perhaps a little too big. The boundary is usually quite a distance from the seats, but that's no big deal. Syria. Much like the top tier of Italian football, it's seen better days. Surprisingly, the best stadium in the country is in Aleppo, which has also seen better days. Incredibly, they started building this stadium in 1980, and it wasn't opened until 2007. Bloody contractors. It was then closed in 2011 due to the war where it suffered damage. It has been repaired since then, at least partially. To be honest, I don't know exactly what it looks like as of 2022. But there isn't a heap of competition in Syria, so I'm sure it's still the best in the country. Taiwan. It's home to the world's largest chip manufacturer. I always thought it was Lay's. It could be no other than the National Stadium. It's such a cool design. I probably don't need to tell you, but it's supposed to resemble a snake. It certainly does just that. That scale-like exterior serves a similar purpose to a snake's exterior. It's made up of solar panels that allowed it to become the first stadium in the world to run off its own energy production. Pretty cool. Tajikistan. If you were to think of the most obscure country, it would probably be Tajikistan. The stadiums in the country are quite reminiscent of a lot of former Soviet republics, and much like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan is yet to build that showpiece modern national stadium, although they are currently working on it. For now, they're left with this unremarkable stadium. Thailand. Don't tell me they didn't know what they were doing when they named their capital Bangkok. Although they have a very interesting national stadium, I'm gonna go for BG Stadium, no relation. I love to see very steep stands, and I get the feeling these wouldn't pass code in most Western nations. That's alright. As long as you don't have a fear of heights, it makes for a better vantage point. Timor-Leste. It's the Haiti of Asia in a way, although I think they're on the up. The National Stadium is pretty much the only stadium of note in the country, and it's about as basic as it gets. Very few actual seats, and not much else to say about it, but I guess it is colourful. Turkmenistan. Known for a hole in the ground, and being Central Asia's version of North Korea. They make up for that though with the grandiose nature of their national stadium. As you can see, there is a giant horse protruding from the roof, and while that might be a standard feature on most stadiums, the intricate patterns on the seating is not. It matches the country's flag, which is actually kinda cool. It's even better than the one in Iran, in my humble onion. Oh, that was a typo. United Arab Emirates. Not familiar with this country? Let me rephrase it. The place where Dubai and Abu Dhabi are. The country has so many flashy buildings, but perhaps not as much in the way of stadiums as you might expect. It is a tiny country after all. I was slightly tempted to go for this one, but to have such little roof coverage in this climate is a no-no. Al Maktoum Stadium. That's much more like it. Although it looks brand new, it actually opened in the 80s and was given a major overhaul prior to the 2019 Asian Cup. It's looking fantastic. Uzbekistan. One of just two doubly landlocked countries. Although the Caspian Sea is only one country away if you want to go for a swim. Milli Stadium, meaning National Stadium, is comfortably the best in the country. It was built on the site of their old national stadium, costing $250 million to construct, and it's actually rather spectacular inside and out. Not quite to the extent of their Turkmen counterparts, but some would say that was over the top. Vietnam. Even in Australia, it's one of the most popular names, but I still can't pronounce it. Nguyen? Nguyen. I'm sorry, I can't say it. My Dinh National Stadium. It features a distinctive exterior with plenty of palm trees about the place, and it's looking quite tropical. Interestingly, it has an Olympic-style cauldron, but the stadium hasn't hosted the Olympics. Fake it till you make it, I guess. It was actually for the Southeast Asian Games once more. That was 20 or so years ago. Yemen. The Jamaican fella agrees. Yemen has some beautiful architecture, but that doesn't include the stadiums, unfortunately. A lot of them have suffered damage due to the ongoing war. It's a sad situation. I'll go for Ali Mohsen Al Muraisi Stadium. The main reason I chose this was the fact that there are chairback seats throughout, and colourful ones at that. That's it for today's video. Did you agree with this list? Almost certainly not. Let me know which ones you would have changed in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, why not consider thinking about pondering the possibility of maybe subscribing? Thanks for watching, have a good one.